Today we're going to cover everything you need to know about charging the BMW iX xDrive50. We have here a brand new 2022 iX xDrive50 courtesy of BMW of Bloomfield in Bloomfield, New Jersey. That's right, I actually got a loaner from a dealership. They just got this vehicle and it's the first iX they got in, and they allowed me to borrow it for a day so I could do some charging videos. So thank you, BMW of Bloomfield. So this guy here has a 111 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now that's the total capacity. Of that, about 105 kilowatt hour is usable. Now this is the large battery pack. BMW makes an iX xDrive40 with a smaller battery pack, but that's only available in Europe. It's not available here in the US. So we're really just talking about the iX xDrive50 with the 111 kilowatt hour battery pack. While we're on that subject of markets, I want to also point out that this video is market specific. It is specific to the North American market. And that's because in different regions of the world, electric vehicles use different connectors. And there's also different standard household electricity in different countries. So while a lot of what we're going to talk about here would apply in a lot of countries around the world, I just want to point out that it really is specific to North America. So with that said, before we jump into the video, I want to remind everyone, please, if you haven't done it already, click that subscribe button so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle charging content here on State of Charge. First, we'll talk about charging the iX at home, and then we'll get into public charging. When charging the iX at home, you have the option of using the supplied charging cable that comes with the iX or purchasing a home charging station. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the supplied charging cable that comes with the car. They're usually in the back of the vehicle, but unfortunately, BMW didn't include it in the car when they gave it to BMW of Bloomfield. Honestly, I don't think they have them yet because it's a brand new unit that BMW is just making for the iX and the i4. So unfortunately, I don't have that to show it to you. However, I did see the unit and I took a short video clip of it back in September when I was in Germany on the Media First Drive event for both the BMW iX and the BMW i4. So let's take a look at the video that I made. It's a really short clip, but at least you could see what it looks like. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Let me tell you what it does. It's actually a dual voltage charging cord. And that means it has two adapters. One adapter allows you to plug it into a regular household outlet. That's a 120 volt outlet. And then it comes with another adapter that allows you to plug it into a 240 volt outlet. We'll first talk about the 120 volt charging source. That's a regular household outlet. All electric vehicles can actually charge from a simple household outlet like you probably already have in your garage. The problem is it charges electric vehicles really slowly because it doesn't supply a lot of electricity. When charging from a regular 120 volt household outlet, that's called level 1 electric vehicle charging. And as I mentioned earlier, the iX has a 105 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's the usable capacity. That's what you get to use in the electric vehicle, 105 kilowatt hour. When using the BMW iX's portable level 1 charging cord, you're only going to get about 1 kilowatt hour delivered to the battery for every hour of charging. So you could do the math. If you were completely empty, if your battery was fully drained and you had to add back 105 kilowatt hour, you're only getting 1 kilowatt hour for about every hour of charging, you're looking at 5.5 days to fully charge your car, which is unreasonable. People are not going to really use their iX and charge it from a 120 volt source. Even if they don't drive that much each day, it has such a big battery pack, people are going to opt for level 2 charging. But just to see how long it would take to charge, I actually have a level 1 charging cord here in my garage. It was actually a BMW level 1 charging cord. I got it with a BMW i3 a few years ago. So while I don't have the exact equipment that would come with the iX, this is going to deliver the same amount of power. So I plugged it in and took a look at the dash on the iX because it actually gives you a nice display and it tells you all your charging information as well as when it's going to finish charging. As you can see, the iX is estimating it will complete charging a little after 3 a.m. on March 16th. You can also see the current time at the bottom of the screen. But what you don't know is that it's actually March 13th today. The car is at 49% state of charge, so it's estimating it's going to take 2 days and 9 hours to charge from 49% state of charge to 100% state of charge. And that's basically only half the battery pack. So charging the iX with the portable charging cable and using the 120 volt level 1 adapter will work. It'll charge the vehicle, but it's not very convenient. And you're going to get somewhere between 2 and 4 miles of range added to the iX for every hour you're charging. Now that depends on how efficient you drive. So you're probably not going to want to use the level 1 charging adapter too often. And you're going to want to use that level 2 charging adapter that's supplied with the portable charging cable. And that gives you a NEMA 1450 plug. Now what you will have to do is install a NEMA 1450 outlet in your garage or outside of your home, depending on wherever you're going to plug in. And that's not too expensive. Should just be a couple $100s to install a NEMA 1450 outlet on a 240 volt circuit. I mean, it's a basic outlet. It's similar to what you would install to plug in, say, an electric clothes dryer or an electric kitchen range. I mentioned that when charging from a regular household outlet, we call that level 1 charging. If you use the NEMA 1450 adapter for the iX's portable charging cable and plug into a NEMA 1450 outlet, that's level 2 charging because it's from a 240 volt source. And when charging on level 2, the iX can accept up to 48 amps, which is a little more than 11 kilowatts. So 1 hour of charging would deliver about 11 kilowatt hour to the iX. I mentioned earlier on level 1 charging, 1 hour of charging delivers 1 kilowatt hour. So it's 11 times faster. But you have to have level 2 charging equipment that can deliver the full 48 amps if you want to charge at that rate. Now, while the portable charging cord does have the NEMA 1450 adapter and allows you to charge on level 2, it can't deliver the full amount of power that the iX can accept. The iX can accept 48 amps. The portable charging cable can only deliver 40 amps. So you're going to charge about 20% slower than what the car's capable of accepting. Now, you don't always have to charge at the fastest rate the vehicle can accept. With the case of the portable charging cord, it'll deliver 40 amps, which is 9.6 kilowatts, so a little less than 10 kilowatt for every hour of charging. And again, while I don't have the portable charging cable with me, I do have a 40 amp charging station here in the garage, so I plugged that into the iX to see how long it would tell us the vehicle would take to charge from 49% to 100% using a 40 amp electric vehicle charger. As you can see, the iX is taking in 40 amps now, and the battery is at the same state of charge it was when I plugged in the level 1 charger. It's at 49% charged. You can also see here that there's a bar at the top left-hand corner of the driver's display, and it shows you how many kilowatt the vehicle is taking in based on the maximum 11 kilowatt that it could take. So you can see here that the bar isn't completely over to 11 kilowatts, a little bit less because it's taken in about 9.6 kilowatt. If we were accepting the full 11 kilowatt, that bar would be completely solid. Now the vehicle is now estimating that it'll finish charging in 7 hours compared to the 2.5 days for level 1. And it's currently 6:19 p.m. and it says the iX will be fully charged at 1:22 a.m. the next day. So that's quite an improvement over level 1 charging time. And even though we're not accepting the full amount of power the iX can take in, it's going to be fully charged before morning when I need to leave. And as I said before, the iX can accept up to 48 amps. I have a 48 amp charging station here in the state of Charge Garage. I actually have about a dozen of them, but that's a whole nother story. So I plugged it in to see what the car would say would be its finished charging time, just to compare it to the level 1 charging and then also level 2 charging on 40 amps. So you can see it's taking in 48 amps and the power bar is completely full. It's all the way over to the maximum 11 kilowatt. The vehicle's now estimating it'll be fully charged in only 5.5 hours, down from the 7 hours it was going to take when I was charging from the 40 amp charging station. So as you can see, most iX owners are going to want to charge their vehicle at home from a level 2 charging source. Now, luckily, there are a lot of options. I've done a lot of reviews here on this channel of home charging equipment, so you might want to take a look at some of my reviews before you make a purchasing decision. Now, BMW also offers their own BMW branded home charging station that gets permanently mounted on the wall. It's called the BMW Wallbox. Now, it's a 40 amp charging station, which is a little puzzling to me because most of the time, when manufacturers make their own home charging equipment, they pair it with the vehicles they sell. They make it deliver the amount of power that their cars can accept. And in the case of the BMW iX and the BMW i4, they can both accept 48 amps, yet the charging station that BMW sells only delivers 40 amps. The same amount of power that the charging cable that they give you for free with the vehicle can deliver. So as far as I'm concerned, there's really not much of a reason to go out and spend your money on a BMW Wallbox. You're not going to charge any faster. Just install a NEMA 1450 outlet in your garage. If you're satisfied with 40 amp charging, call it a day. Plug in your portable charger that they give you with the car and charge your vehicle with that. But if that's not fast enough, you want a 48 amp charger, or you just want to buy a permanently mounted charging station to put in your garage and leave your portable charger in the back of your iX, that's fine. A lot of people do that. There's a lot of choices. And as I said, take a look at some of my reviews. But one thing that I want to point out is when you do get your charging station and you decide to have it installed, or when you're going to install your NEMA 1450 outlet, make sure you hire a qualified licensed electrician. I know a lot of people try to do this themselves at home and, weekend warriors do wiring at home. Listen, I'm guilty of that myself on some occasions. But with electric vehicle charging, it's a little different. It's because you're delivering a tremendous amount of power for many continuous hours. And quite often it's at night when you're sleeping, like the worst time that you would want to have some sort of a problem with your electricity. It's just not worth saving a couple $100s and putting your family's lives at risk. I really recommend you get a qualified licensed electrician. Now, BMW has partnered with Qmerit, which is a nationwide network of electric vehicle charging equipment expert installers. And I recommend checking them out if you need an electrician to install your charging equipment or your NEMA 1450 outlet. If you don't have your own electrician that does all the work in your house that you're comfortable with, if you're looking for advice, check out the Qmerit website. I actually put a link to their website in the description of this video, as well as links to some of the popular home charging stations that I've reviewed and recommend. So if you're searching for electric vehicle charging equipment, take a look at the links I put in the description of this video before you make a purchase. And there's one last thing I want to cover with regards to home charging before we get into public charging, and that's charging from a Tesla charging station. Now, Tesla uses a different connector than every other electric vehicle sold in North America. Every electric vehicle other than Tesla's, including the BMW iX, uses what's called a J1772 connector. This is what it looks like here. This plugs into your iX's charge port for level 1 and level 2 charging. Tesla uses their own proprietary connector. Nobody else uses this connector except for Tesla. However, you can charge the iX from a Tesla charging station with an adapter. This is called a Tesla to J1772 adapter, and there's actually quite a few of them available on the market today. So let's say you already own a Tesla and you have a Tesla wall connector hanging on your wall. The Tesla wall connector is Tesla's version of the BMW Wallbox. It's actually a 48 amp charging station. So that can deliver the full amount of power that the iX can accept. So you already have a Tesla, you're charging it with your Tesla wall connector. Now you come home with an iX, you're a 2 EV family. You can use your Tesla wall connector to charge both vehicles. Just have to get one of these adapters. What you do is you just plug your Tesla connector in this side, and then the J1772 plugs into your iX, and it charges the vehicle just fine. However, I need to point out something that's really important. Okay, there's a lot of these Tesla to J1772 adapters available on the market today, and different adapters can handle different amount of power. Now, the iX can accept 48 amps. The Tesla wall connector can deliver 48 amps. Perfect match, right? However, some of these adapters can only handle 32 amps. Some of them can handle 40 amps. You need one that can handle at least 48 amps to be completely safe. They even make higher powered ones that can accept 60 amps. I prefer you pay a couple extra bucks and get a higher powered one, so you know all the innards and bits involved in this are over-engineered to deliver constant 48 amps, especially if you're going to use it every day. A lot of power is going to pass through here. You want it built really well and strong. So while this will work and charge your iX just fine, please do not buy an adapter that can deliver less than 48 amps. You'll save a couple of bucks. You'll probably melt the unit after a while, or at worst, you could have a fire. You don't want to have anything like that in your garage. So, you know, these things work great, but get one that pairs to the iX. Now, you can also use these to charge on Tesla destination chargers. Tesla has a network of destination chargers all around North America. They have thousands of them. They have them at, well, destinations, things like restaurants, hotels, country clubs, sporting venues, public parking garages. They're all over the place. And the great thing about it is you get one of these adapters, you can use them. One thing I will say is they're usually located on private property at a, like I said, a hotel or a restaurant. You should get permission to plug in first. Don't just pull up to a restaurant, plug in and walk away. You know, make sure you're patronizing the restaurant, or you go in and ask the manager, look, I need to charge for a couple hours. Can I use your charging station? Now, how do you find these Tesla destination chargers? There's apps that show you where all the charging stations are. I'm going to get into that in the next segment when we talk about public charging and how to find public charging stations. But just know that with one of these Tesla to J1772 adapters, you can charge from Tesla wall connectors as well as Tesla destination chargers just fine. The only problem is you can't charge from a Tesla supercharger. Tesla superchargers are DC fast chargers for Tesla vehicles. They're super high powered. You probably recognize them. Tesla has them installed all over the place in parking lots across the country. They have literally thousands of them. And those are the high speed charging stations that allow Tesla vehicles to travel very long distances with little inconvenience. Now, there are DC fast charging stations for the iX to use. And as I said, we're going to get into that in a minute with public charging stations. But since we're talking about the Tesla adapter, I just want to point out that you cannot use that on a Tesla supercharger. But it worked at the other Tesla charging station. Yeah, I know. You can use that on a level 2 Tesla wall connector or destination charger. It works fine. Those are AC electric. The superchargers are on DC electric, and they charge at a much higher rate with a lot more power, and the adapter will not work. Well, I'm here. I'll give it a try anyway. Well, suit yourself. It's not going to work. It's not working. Yeah, that's what I told you. Now, even if the adapter was physically capable of accepting the amount of power a supercharger can deliver, the supercharger wouldn't send the power to the car, because the way Tesla superchargers work is when a vehicle plugs in, there's an authentication process. The charging station communicates with the car and says, hey, are you a Tesla? The car says, yes, I'm a Tesla. This is my VIN number. The charging station accepts it, says, okay, that's right, you're a Tesla, that's your VIN, here's the power. When BMW iX or another electric vehicle pulls up and tries to use an adapter, the communication process doesn't work. The Tesla supercharger says, who are you? And the iX or the other electric vehicle doesn't even respond because it doesn't talk Tesla talk. But the good news is Tesla has promised that they're going to open up their supercharger network to other electric vehicles. And they've actually started doing it in Europe. They have a couple pilot programs open in a couple different countries in Europe where they allow electric vehicle owners from other OEMs to charge on the supercharger network. Now, it's a little bit easier in Europe because the Tesla vehicles use the same connector as all the other brands do. That's not the case in the US. Tesla uses their proprietary connector. All the other vehicles use different connectors. Now, this was level 1 and level 2 charging, uses the J1772. For DC fast charging, it gets even more complicated here in the US. There's the CCS combo plug, which is what the BMW iX uses, and then there's another plug called CHAdeMO that currently is being phased out in North America. Nissan still uses it on one of their electric vehicles, not their latest electric vehicle, and Mitsubishi still uses it on one of their plug-in hybrids. But the other manufacturers that have used it in the past are phasing it out and using the CCS combo plug, which is what the iX uses. But the problem is, here in the US, it uses the CCS plug and Tesla still uses their proprietary connector. So when Tesla opens up their supercharger network here in the US, they're going to have to either make an adapter that would allow the cars to accept the DC high-powered current, or they'll add a different connector onto the superchargers that is the CCS combo plug. We're not sure exactly how they're going to handle it yet. It's probably going to be the route of the adapter. That would seem to make the most sense, but Tesla has promised that they're going to open it up, so we're keeping our fingers crossed because that'll be a lot easier for BMW iX owners and owners of all electric vehicles to travel long distances, because there's so many Tesla superchargers out there. It'll, in a sense, double the amount of available high-speed chargers that you can use. So now let's talk about public charging. When charging in public, there are level 2 charging stations and DC fast chargers. DC fast chargers are the ultra high-speed chargers that really enable long-distance traveling. With level 2 public charging, it's very similar to charging at home on level 2. But I will point out that public level 2 charging stations are generally limited to about 6.6 kilowatts, somewhere in that area. So you're probably going to charge a little bit slower on level 2 in public than you could at home. Now, that exception is Tesla destination chargers. Tesla destination chargers will be able to deliver the full 48 amps that the iX can deliver. So if you have the opportunity to plug into one of those, you definitely should. Now, as far as DC fast chargers are concerned, they're the ultra high-speed charging stations that can deliver up to 195 kilowatt to the iX. Well, that's its maximum charging rate. Now, DC fast charging is different than level 1 and level 2 charging. The charge rate isn't consistent. When you plug in level 1 or level 2, you're pretty much going to accept the same amount of power for nearly your whole charging session until the very end. Maybe when the vehicle is about 98% charged, the charge rate slows down, it tapers down so the car can balance all the cells and finish at 100% charge. With DC fast charging, the iX can accept up to 195 kilowatts, but it only does it for a short period of time, and then it starts ramping the charging rate down. So if you were to plug in at, say, 50% state of charge, you'd never see 195 kilowatt. You need to be at a very low state of charge in order to accept the vehicle's maximum charge rate. Now, BMW says that the iX xDrive50 will charge from 10% to 80% in about 35 minutes. I did full DC fast charge recordings with this vehicle just yesterday from 0 to 100%. I mapped out the whole charging curve. That's going to be on my channel in about a week. I'm going to have that full charging curve video. You might want to take a look at that because I'm going to go into much more detail on DC fast charging the iX than I'm going to do right here. We're just doing a brief overview of it now. As I said, BMW said 35 minutes, 10 to 80%. I took 40 minutes to go from 10 to 80%. Actually, I think it was 41 minutes, a little bit longer, and it was because it was cold out. It's March here in New Jersey. It was cold, and when you DC fast charge, things like temperature affect how fast it'll charge, as well as the state of charge. As I just mentioned, higher state of charges, the vehicle doesn't pull in as much power, and that's why the charging curve kind of does this. A lot of power in the beginning, and then it ramps down. Another thing that you should know about DC fast charging is once the vehicle gets to about 80% state of charge, it really slows down to the point where it's not worth staying at the DC fast charge station unless you really need to. Unless you need those extra miles, most people charge up to about 80, maybe 85%, and they unplug and move on, because at that point the vehicle is only charging at, level 2 charging speed. So you're going to sit around and wait for a long time. In my DC fast charge recording, I charged from 0 to 80% in 45 minutes. And then it took another 38 minutes to go from 80% to 100%. So, you get 80% of the battery in 45 minutes and then 20% of the battery in 38 minutes. So it really isn't worth it. Unplug at 80%, move on, as I said, unless you really need the extra range. So when you're charging in public, how do you find the stations? That's not a problem at home. You know where your charger is. But when you're charging in public, where are these charging stations? How do you find them? Well, one way you could find them is through your navigation system, the iX. It lists all the local charging stations, and you can use that to map you to the charging stations. However, I'm not a big fan of in-car navigation systems with regards to charging stations. This isn't just a knock on BMW. All the OEMs have their charging station maps integrated into their nav systems. The problem is they're all missing vital information that's really important. So what I always recommend is download apps. There's great apps out there that tell you where there's public charging stations. I like PlugShare and ChargeWay. Those apps give you a lot of information that you're not going to get on the in-car navigation. ChargeWay, for instance, lists the charging stations by the connector type and by the power the charging station can deliver. So you could quickly and easily see if it uses the connector that you use. Remember, I told you with DC fast charging, the BMW iX uses the CCS or combo connector. But there are vehicles out there that use the CHAdeMO connector. Those are Nissan and Mitsubishi vehicles use that. So there's some charging stations that just have a CHAdeMO connector. And the problem is with in-car navigation systems, a lot of times they don't distinguish the connector. So you could use your BMW navigation system to route you to a DC fast charger. You pull up, you can't plug in because it's not the connector you use. I noticed today when I was driving, as I was driving by a Tesla Supercharger station, it had it listed on the map as a place you could plug in. So you can't plug in there. That's why I'm saying use these apps, PlugShare, ChargeWare. They're great apps. They also give you these really cool tips. PlugShare, for instance, is crowdsourced. So if somebody pulls up and the charging station, let's say, is broken, they leave a comment and they leave the date. So you look at your app and say, oh, wow, just yesterday somebody said this station's broken. I'm not going to go there. It gives you really good hints like that. You don't get that with the in-car navigation. It also tells you how much it's going to cost. Now, when charging in public, the price varies greatly depending on the network, and even within some networks like ChargePoint, for instance, they have different pricing everywhere because the station is owned by the property owner. Networks like EVgo and Electrify America, for instance, they have consistent pricing in your area, so you'll pay the same at each charging station, but there's different prices from network to network. So what you should always do is download these apps, take a look at the apps, the area where you drive and live, see what networks are really prevalent in those areas, because sometimes networks are regional. There's some networks that have a really strong presence in some areas. They're not so much in other areas. Electrify America really is the one true nationwide network of high-speed DC fast chargers. But you want to know what's in your area. You want to join those networks ahead of time. That way, when you pull up to your public charging station, you don't have to call them or try to swipe a credit card. Those things, half the times, they don't even work, the credit card readers. You can initialize a charging session by calling the company, but it's cumbersome. It takes a while. What you really want to do is already have that app on your phone, downloaded, and you're a member. So you just take your phone, you tap it against the charging station, it initiates the charging session, you plug in, and you're all set. That makes it so much easier. One network that you definitely want to join is the Electrify America charging network. And that's because BMW has made a partnership with Electrify America for the BMW iX and the BMW i4. You get 2 years of complimentary 30-minute DC fast charging sessions. Now, I know it's limited to 30 minutes, it's going to shut off, but you could just as well then just initiate a new session and plug it back in if you want to charge for longer than 30 minutes. But honestly, 30 minutes is going to get you to 80% charged unless you're really plugging in at like 0, and then you'd be at like 70 or 75% charge. So that 30-minute charging session is probably all you need. But if you really needed to charge for more, it'll shut off in 30 minutes. You just unplug the connector, wait a minute, plug it back in, reinitiate a new charging session, and you could stay there as long as you want. You could just keep doing that. It's unlimited for 2 years, and it's free with your BMW iX. So make sure, if your dealer hasn't told you that, because I'm pretty sure you're going to have to join the network, and I think you have to enter your VIN number in order to activate your free 2-year charging session. If your dealer hasn't told you how to do that, reach back out to them, because they're supposed to set you up with that and tell you exactly what the process is, so you get your 2 years of unlimited free charging on the Electrify America network. Now, BMW put a nice graphic out on their website that shows the difference between level 1, level 2, and DC fast charging for both the iX and i4. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a generic charging guide that BMW produced that actually applies for both the iX and the i4. The BMW i4 is a little more efficient than the BMW iX. It's smaller, it's lighter, it's more aerodynamic. So therefore, it'll go further on the same amount of energy, and thus it charges slightly quicker. So I'm going to adjust the estimated charging time that BMW offered on this chart to apply to the iX. Let's take a look at level 1 charging. So that can be done from any household outlet. Real simple. It's universal. They're all over the place. That's 120 volt charging. BMW says you can get up to 4 miles of range for every hour of charging, but that's for the i4. With the BMW iX, you're going to get somewhere between 2 and 3 miles of range for every hour you charge. Jumping over to level 2, now that's for home and public charging. It uses the J1772 connector. Does a little picture of what the pins look like. That's faster. With 240 volt charging, BMW says you can add up to 40 miles of range for every hour of charging, and that's for the i4. With the iX, you can get up to 30 miles of range for every hour you're charging, and that's if you're on a 48 amp charging source. As we talked about earlier, if you're on a lower powered unit, it's going to take a little bit longer. Jumping up to DC fast charging, they're public only. You don't have DC fast chargers at home. And I also want to comment here that some people call DC fast charging level 3 charging. You would think that would be the name because we have level 1, level 2, and then level 3 would be the next step, right? But that's actually not the proper term. The SAE hasn't defined exactly what level 3 charging is. So it's really called DC fast charging. Now, as you can see there, that's a picture of the CCS connector, and that is the fastest way to charge your iX. BMW says you can add up to 108 miles for just 10 minutes of charging. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that would only happen if you were at a very low state of charge when the vehicle can accept its maximum charge rate. And again, that's for the i4. With the iX, you can add up to 90 miles of range in 10 minutes if you were to plug in at a very low state of charge, say under 10% state of charge. You could add about 90 miles in only 10 minutes. When you open up the charge port, you'll notice that there's a list here that has different colors for the LED light, and it explains exactly what they mean. So let's plug in the vehicle. The first light is yellow. That means it's plugged in, but it's initializing. Now you'll see there's a blue light, which is pulsating. That means the vehicle is actively charging. If we had the car set for a scheduled charging, where it was going to take advantage of low-cost charging, say later in the evening, it would be a solid blue light. And you can see a little plug with a clock there. And that means that it's plugged in, but it's waiting to charge according to the schedule. When the charging session is complete, the light will be green. And if there's any type of fault in the charging equipment or the vehicle, it'll be blinking red. And finally, let's take a look at some of the in-vehicle charging settings that you should be aware of. First, we'll go to the menu here, click on charging. As you can see, here's the different options we have. Let's take a look at charging mode. It's currently set to charge immediately. So this is for delayed charging, or to set a schedule. If you have time of use electricity plan, some people can save a lot of money by charging during off-peak hours. You should talk to your electric utility and see if that's available, because you could save some money doing that. Right now we have it set to charge immediately, means when you plug in the vehicle, it's going to immediately start to charge, because I don't have a time of use plan set. But if you did have time of use charging, you would set it here, and basically what it would do you'd come home, plug the vehicle in, but it wouldn't start charging yet. It would start charging when your schedule begins, which typically is midnight. A lot of time of use plans are like midnight to 6 a.m. and during those hours you'll pay much less for your electricity, and it may really save you a lot of money. But again, every utility has different time of use plans, so talk to your utility and see if it makes sense for you. Okay, so let's go back now. Next is departure plan. Right now I don't have any time set, and down here you'll see it's checked to precondition for departure. Now you can set departure plans, which is basically you tell the vehicle when do you leave every day in the morning, or let's say in the afternoon when you leave work. So you can set either a one-off departure plan or regular schedules. One could be in the morning, one could be at night, say at 8 a.m. in the morning. This is 5 o'clock at night when you leave work. What'll happen is when you have these set, the vehicle will precondition the cabin and the battery. So when you leave in the morning, the car's fully charged and it's nice and warm. Let's say it's in the winter and it's very cold. You know, electric vehicles don't go quite as far when it's cold as they do when they're warm, but you can extend your range by setting this departure plan. Let's say if you live in one of the northern states and it's super cold over the winter, you leave at 8 a.m. in the morning. You tell the vehicle that you leave at 8 a.m. in the morning. You program it here. You'd click this off, and then it's going to drop down where you set the time. And then at 8 a.m. in the morning, when you come out, you'll unplug the vehicle. It'll be 100% charged, and the cabin will be nice and warm, and the battery will be heated too. So that way you're not wasting energy from the battery to warm the cabin. It's already done it while you were plugged in. Now at night, let's say you have it set to precondition when you're leaving work. Now you're not going to be plugged in at that point. Well, probably not. So what you are going to be using is energy from the battery. So you have to take that into consideration. If you want to precondition when you're leaving work on a daily, regular basis, you're going to use extra energy from your battery. It's going to shorten your range. Okay, next we're going to take a look at the AC charging limit. Okay, this is for level 1 and level 2 charging, which is AC charging. DC fast charging is DC charging. Right now, it has 48 amp limit. As I mentioned earlier, the vehicle can accept up to 48 amps. When you are charging from a charging station that can't deliver 48 amps, you don't have to change this. The vehicle will communicate with the charging station and it'll deliver what it's capable of delivering. So you really don't have to restrict this. Some people have limited electrical supply at their house and they just want to make sure that the car doesn't try to accept more power than the house can deliver. So they can lower it here. You see this lowers down. So we'll start off at the 48 amps. And you could derate it to 32 amps, to 20 amps, to 16 amps. And then from here on down, it's just 1 amp, 15, 14, 13, 12, all the way down to 6 amps. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Some people that don't have a lot of a high driving demand, they don't drive a lot of miles each day, they like to charge their vehicle very slowly. So they'll set the amperage down lower and let the vehicle charge really slowly overnight. But the other reason is if you're plugged into a source that you're not certain if it can deliver that much power. So you'll derate the charging limit so it doesn't overdraw and blow a circuit. Now, this typically wouldn't be the case at home because you know what your circuits can deliver and you wouldn't have to be concerned about derating it. If you know the circuit can't deliver more than, say, 32 amps, you shouldn't have anything more than a 32 amp charging station on it. And if that's the case, you don't have to derate this. You can leave it at 48 amps. The charging station knows it can only deliver 32 amps. But if it's not wired correctly and the charging station's a 48 amp charging station, but it's only on a 32 amp circuit, you would definitely want to derate it down to 32 amps so it doesn't overdraw the circuit. But that shouldn't happen in any event. You shouldn't have a charging station installed on a circuit that can't deliver the power that it's capable of delivering. That's another reason why you want to get a qualified licensed electrician to always install your charging equipment. So let me bump this back up because I'm going to be charging tonight at 48 amps and I don't want to forget it. All right, let's take a look at the next thing in here, charging limit. So right now you could see that it's set to charge to 100%. BMW actually recommends not charging to 100% on a daily basis if you don't need the range. The reason being is that batteries really like to be somewhere between 20% and 80%. If you consistently charge over 80% every single day, it's not going to really kill the battery or anything like that, but it will bring on slightly earlier battery degradation, meaning you'll lose a little bit of your range faster than you would if you didn't charge to 100% every day. My recommendation is, the iX has over 300 miles of driving range. The top version has 324 miles, and then the lowest version has 305 miles. It depends on what size tire and wheels you have on the vehicle, basically between 305 and 324, but all versions of the iX xDrive50 have more than 300 miles of EPA rated range. So if you're charging every day, very few people need 300 miles of range. I highly recommend you dialing this down. Okay, it charges, see right here, it's telling you the vehicle charges the fastest up to 80%, and it's also optimal for battery life and the fastest charging route. So what I was just talking about battery life, they give you a little warning here. I hadn't seen that before. And they're basically telling you, look, it's not the best to charge to 100% every single day. You can, they're not telling you you can't, but they recommend you setting it to 80%. So I'm gonna hit this okay. And what I typically do, I typically leave my EVs to 85%. You're going to be totally fine at 85%. And let's say tomorrow, you're going on a really long road trip, no problem. Bump it up to 100%. You could do that as often as you like, but my personal recommendation would be if you don't need 100% of your range every day, set it to 80 or 85% and live with that. The last thing here, oh, actually there's two more. The unlock charging cable. So when you're charging the iX, it locks the connector to the vehicle. So nobody can unplug you while you're charging. Now, if you're at home and you're in your home garage, you don't have to worry about that. Nobody's going to unplug you. But in public, people actually unplug people's electric vehicles. Most of the time they do that because they need to charge and there's no other charging stations. So they'll unplug somebody and plug in their car. So what happens is most electric vehicles allow you to lock the charging cable to the vehicle. Now here's your options in here. You can unlock the charging cable at the end of charging, which means if you tick this on, okay, the range may be reduced when preconditioning for departure. Okay, yeah, that's talking about preconditioning. I'm not concerned about that right now. But what this tells you here is when the vehicle is 100% charged, or when it's finished, let's say you have it set to charge to 80%, whenever the charging is done, the connector will unlock. So somebody else can then unplug it and use it if they needed to. This is nice to check. Once your vehicle is fully charged, you don't need the connector to remain stuck to the vehicle. Let somebody else use it if they need to. And quite honestly, when you're in your garage, it's good to have it unlock anyway. That way, when you walk out into the garage, you don't have to unlock the vehicle in order to take the charging connector off. So I recommend having that set here. The other option here is unlock charging socket cover permanently. That would mean it's always unlocked. It's probably not the best policy to do that if you're charging in public. If you only charge at home, then there's no reason not to check this box here, because it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to unplug you. You're safe in your own garage, so it really doesn't matter if it's unlocked while it's charging. The last option here is fan loudness. This is really interesting. It's like, I think it's the only electric vehicle that has this. And basically, there's fans that are used to cool the battery during the charging process. So if your car's charging and it's turned off, and all of a sudden you hear fans turn on, don't worry about it. It's totally normal. It's totally fine. I actually made a video about this for BMW i3 owners because the fan was so loud on the BMW i3, it startled people. And so many people called their dealership thinking there was something wrong with their car because it was turned off, but it was making a super loud noise. I think that's why BMW put this on the iX, because this is the first time I've ever seen this on an EV. So basically what they allow you to do is on unrestricted, the fans will turn on at the highest speed whenever they need to cool the battery while you're charging. If you put it on automatic, so charging duration may vary depending on the time of the day. Yeah, so if the battery was really hot, what it's going to do is it's going to turn the fans on, but it will also limit how powerful the fans spin to keep it from being very loud. Now, down on the last one is restricted. That's really restricts how much the fans work. So it tells you here the charging time will be increased or may be increased. That's because if the fans aren't allowed to do their job and spin really violently to cool everything down, the car is going to slow the charging speed down. It's going to throttle it down, and it won't charge as fast as it could charge. I think this is just really interesting that BMW put this in here. Personally, if it was me, I would leave it on unrestricted. I don't care if it makes a lot of noise. It is quite loud, and if somebody doesn't know what it's doing, they might think there's something wrong with your car, because trust me, when you get your iX and you hear those fans spinning for the first time, you're going to be a little startled, because what it's doing is it's pumping that coolant through the batteries to cool it down during the charging process. But I'd leave it on unrestricted unless you're concerned that, you know, somebody might think there's a problem with your car, or if your car is parked in a garage, like right next to, say, your family room, you might hear the fans spinning around while you're inside watching TV. So this is how you would restrict it if the fan loudness is a problem for you. So that's it for the in-car infotainment charging features. I think BMW did a nice job of offering all these different settings to let you control the various aspects of your iX charging. Well, that's it for our everything you need to know about charging the BMW iX video. We hope we answered all of your charging questions for the iX, but if we didn't, leave them in the comment section below and I'll try to get you the answers you seek. If this is your first time here on State of Charge, please don't forget, click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle and electric vehicle charging videos. And thanks for watching.